HOA Karen thought she had all the power. She tormented my disabled daughter for months, then tasered her in a parking lot. Emma lay crying on the ground while Karen smiled. But Karen made one fatal error: she never asked who Emma's father was. Now, in this courtroom, she's about to find out. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The fluorescent lights of courtroom 7B hummed their monotonous tune as I sat in the back row, my baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses hiding the exhaustion that had become my constant companion. Nobody recognized me here. That was exactly how I wanted it. My daughter Emma sat 3 rows ahead, her wheelchair positioned carefully in the accessible seating area. Even from behind, I could see the slight tremor in her shoulders, the anxiety that courtrooms always triggered in her. At 19, Emma had already endured more than most people face in a lifetime. The car accident 2 years ago had stolen her ability to walk, but it hadn't touched her spirit. That remained unbroken, beautiful, defiant. Until today, perhaps. I watched as Karen Morrison entered the courtroom like a queen surveying her kingdom. Designer suit, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, and that expression, that self-righteous sneer I had come to know from the dozens of complaints filed against her as HOA president of Riverside Gardens. She walked past Emma without a glance, her heels clicking against the marble floor with military precision. Karen had no idea who I was. To her, I was just another face in the crowd. She didn't know that for the past 15 years, I had served as Assistant Commissioner of the State Civil Rights Division. She didn't know that I had spent my career fighting people exactly like her, bullies who hid behind rules and regulations to mask their cruelty. And she definitely didn't know what she had done to my daughter. Emma had been so excited about the apartment. After 2 years of living at home, enduring my overprotective hovering and her mother's constant worry, she wanted independence. The accessible unit at Riverside Gardens seemed perfect: ground floor, widened doorways, roll-in shower, and a small patio where she could garden. "Dad, it's perfect," she had said, her green eyes sparkling with hope. "I can finally have my own place. Please don't worry so much." I worried anyway. That was my job as a father. But I also knew Emma needed this. She needed to prove to herself that the accident hadn't defined her entire future. The problem started within the first week. Karen Morrison appeared at Emma's door on a Tuesday morning, clipboard in hand, lips pursed in disapproval. Emma told me about it that evening during our daily phone call. She said my welcome mat was the wrong color. Emma laughed, though I could hear the tension underneath. Can you believe it? Apparently, Riverside Gardens only allows beige, tan, or gray mats. Mine was blue. She gave me 48 hours to replace it or face a fine. "That's ridiculous," I said, anger already simmering. "The Fair Housing Act." "Dad, stop. It's just a mat. I'll get a beige one. It's not worth fighting over." But it wasn't just a mat. Over the next 2 months, Karen found endless reasons to target my daughter. The small wind chime on Emma's patio violated noise ordinances. The portable ramp Emma's physical therapist had installed for easier access. Not approved by the architectural committee. The handicapped parking sign Emma had requested for the spot nearest her door. Denied because it would set a precedent. Each complaint was documented, delivered with passive-aggressive politeness and the constant threat of fines, violations, and potential eviction. Emma tried to comply with everything, her spirit slowly dimming with each new demand. "She's doing this on purpose," Emma finally admitted during one of my visits. She told Mrs. Patterson next door that people like me lower property values. That disabled people should live in special facilities, not regular communities. My blood boiled, but Emma grabbed my hand. "Please, Dad. Don't do anything. I need to handle this myself. If you swoop in and fix everything, I'll never know if I can stand on my own 2 feet." She paused, then gave a bitter laugh. "You know what I mean." So I waited. I documented everything Emma told me. I advised her on her rights. And I watched my daughter's light dim, week by week, as Karen Morrison's harassment continued. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. Emma had been selected to testify at a county commission hearing about accessibility improvements in public housing. She had worked on her speech for weeks, pouring her heart into advocating for others like her. The hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock. Emma left her apartment at 1:30, giving herself plenty of time. Her specially modified van was parked in her designated spot, and she was transferring from her wheelchair when Karen Morrison appeared. "You can't park here," Karen announced. Emma looked up, confused. "This is my assigned spot. You can see the sign right there. That sign was installed without proper approval. I'm having it removed on Monday. This spot is now reserved for visitors only. Karen, the hearing starts in 30 minutes. I need to leave now." "Then you should have planned better. Move your vehicle immediately, or I'll have it towed." What happened next, I would learn from security footage that Emma's lawyer would later subpoena. Emma, frustrated and desperate not to be late for the most important speech of her life, tried to reason with Karen. She explained about the hearing, about the accommodation requirements under the Fair Housing Act, about basic human decency. Karen's response was to pull out her phone and call a towing company. Emma, panic rising, attempted to finish transferring into her van. Her hands were shaking as she tried to fold her wheelchair. That's when Karen made her fatal mistake. "If you don't move right now, I'll make you move." "How exactly do you plan to do that?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. Karen reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small device. A taser. The HOA board approved these for security purposes. "You're creating a disturbance. I'm authorized to use necessary force to maintain order." "You can't be serious." Emma never finished her sentence. Karen pressed the taser to my daughter's shoulder and pulled the trigger. The security footage showed Emma convulsing, falling from her van's driver's seat onto the hot asphalt. Her wheelchair clattered beside her. She lay there, unable to move, as electrical current tore through her body for 5 eternal seconds. When it stopped, Emma was crying, gasping for breath, her body betraying her once again. Karen stood over her, taser still in hand, and said words that would be quoted in every news report for the next month: "Maybe now you'll learn to follow the rules." A neighbor called 911. Emma was taken to the hospital with burns on her shoulder, severe muscle pain, and trauma that no doctor could quantify on a chart. She missed her hearing testimony. She missed the chance to advocate for people like her. And Karen Morrison went home, wrote up a violation notice for Emma's disturbing the peace, and had it slipped under Emma's door by Monday morning. I was in a budget meeting when Emma's call came through. I saw her name on my screen and almost declined. I would call her back during lunch. Something made me answer. "Emma." "Sweetheart, I'm in a meeting." "Dad." Just one word, but the way she said it made my heart stop. Broken, devastated, defeated. What happened? Through tears and stammering words, she told me everything. By the time she finished, I had already left the meeting, already gotten in my car, already decided that Karen Morrison had finally crossed a line I couldn't allow her to cross. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even as rage threatened to choke me. "Home. Dad, I'm okay. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to move back in with you and Mom. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." "She wins." "No." My voice came out harder than I intended. "No, baby girl. She doesn't win. Not this time. Not ever. Dad, please. I'm tired of fighting. Then let me fight for you. Just this once. You've been so strong, Emma. You've endured so much. But sometimes, when someone crosses a line this far, you need to let the people who love you step in. Will you let me do that?" Silence stretched between us, broken only by her quiet crying. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I'm going to make sure Karen Morrison faces every single consequence of what she's done. And I'm going to do it legally, publicly, and permanently." For the next 3 weeks, I worked with a fury I hadn't felt in years. During the day, I maintained my duties as assistant commissioner. During the nights and weekends, I became Emma's advocate. I started by contacting the Riverside Gardens HOA board. Karen had told them the taser was approved for security purposes. This was a lie. The board had no knowledge of any taser, no policy allowing physical force by HOA officers, and no documentation of any security authorization. I obtained the security footage. I documented every single violation notice Karen had issued to Emma over 3 months. I interviewed other residents, 14 people who had similar stories of Karen's harassment, though none quite as severe as Emma's. Mrs. Patricia Chen, an elderly woman with a walker, had been fined repeatedly for taking too long to collect her mail. She told me I moved too slowly and was blocking the mailroom. I'm 83 years old. Marcus Webb, a veteran with PTSD and a service dog, had been threatened with eviction because his dog barked once during a firework display. She said veterans should keep their problems private and stop making everyone else uncomfortable. The Rodriguez family had been cited for speaking Spanish too loudly on their balcony. She said this is America and we should speak English if we want to live here. Every story made my blood boil hotter. But I documented them all methodically, professionally. I was building a case not just for Emma, but for every person Karen Morrison had tormented with her power. I filed a criminal complaint for assault with a deadly weapon. I filed a civil rights complaint with my own division, carefully recusing myself from direct involvement but ensuring it went to the most thorough investigators we had. I contacted the district attorney's office. I reached out to the Fair Housing Alliance. And then I did something Karen Morrison would never expect from her victims. I filed a personal lawsuit on Emma's behalf, not just for the assault, but for systematic harassment, discrimination based on disability, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of the Fair Housing Act. The hearing was scheduled for early October. Karen, represented by an expensive lawyer the HOA board reluctantly paid for, filed a motion to dismiss. She claimed Emma was exaggerating, that the taser use was justified, that she was simply enforcing legitimate HOA rules. The judge denied the motion. The trial was set. Emma was terrified. "I have to face her again. Dad, I don't know if I can." "You can," I assured her. "And this time, you won't face her alone. This time, everyone will see exactly who Karen Morrison is." I arrived at the courthouse early and sat in the back. I wanted to observe, to see how Karen carried herself, to watch her lawyer's strategy. Emma didn't know I was there. I had told her I would attend, but I deliberately arrived separately and disguised my appearance. Some battles require public confrontation. Others require patience, observation, and the perfect moment to strike. Emma arrived with her mother, Sarah, who pushed her wheelchair. My ex-wife and I had divorced years ago, but we had always remained united when it came to Emma. Sarah's eyes were red, she had been crying all morning. But her jaw was set with determination. They took their seats in the accessible section. Emma's lawyer, Jennifer Torres, was already at the plaintiff's table, reviewing notes. Jennifer was one of the best civil rights attorneys in the state. She had taken Emma's case the moment I called her, reducing her fee to nearly nothing. "Cases like this are why I became a lawyer," she had said. "People like Karen Morrison need to be stopped." Karen arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, 15 minutes before the hearing. She wore a navy blue suit that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Her lawyer, Richard Pemberton, was a slick corporate attorney more accustomed to defending businesses than individual clients. He looked uncomfortable, likely because his case was indefensible. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Maria Santos entered, a woman known for her no-nonsense approach and deep commitment to justice. I had appeared before her several times in my professional capacity. She was fair, thorough, and had zero tolerance for discrimination. "We're here today for Morrison vs. Thompson civil hearing," Judge Santos announced. "Ms. Torres, you may begin with your opening statement." Jennifer stood, buttoning her blazer. "Your Honor, this case is about power and cruelty. The defendant, Karen Morrison, used her position as HOA president to systematically harass my client, Emma Thompson, because of her disability. Over 3 months, Ms. Morrison issued 14 separate violation notices for minor or fabricated infractions. She denied reasonable accommodations required by law. She created a hostile environment designed to force Ms. Thompson from her home. And when my client dared to stand up for herself, Ms. Morrison assaulted her with a taser, causing physical injury and severe emotional trauma. Karen's expression never changed. That same self-righteous smugness remained fixed on her face. Ms. Morrison's actions weren't just cruel, they were illegal. They violated the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and basic human decency. We're here today to ensure she faces consequences and that no one else suffers as Emma Thompson has suffered. Pemberton's opening statement was predictable. Your Honor, Ms. Morrison takes her duties as HOA president seriously. She enforces rules fairly and consistently for all residents. The incident with Ms. Thompson was an unfortunate misunderstanding during a tense confrontation. Ms. Morrison felt threatened and acted in self-defense. This lawsuit is an overreaction to a simple dispute between neighbors. Self-defense. I nearly stood up right there. Emma, a 19-year-old paralyzed girl sitting in a wheelchair, was apparently threatening enough to justify being tasered. Jennifer called Emma to testify first. Sarah wheeled her to the witness stand, and the court deputy helped position her wheelchair properly. Emma's hands were shaking as she was sworn in. Emma, can you tell the court about your first interaction with the defendant? Jennifer asked gently. Emma's voice was soft at first, barely audible. Judge Santos asked her to speak up. She took a breath and tried again. It was my second day in the apartment. I was so excited to finally have my own place. I had put out a welcome mat my mom gave me, it was blue with yellow flowers. Karen knocked on my door and told me it violated HOA rules. She said I had 48 hours to replace it or she would fine me. How did that make you feel? Confused. It seemed like such a small thing. But I wanted to follow the rules, so I got a beige mat the next day. And after that? Emma described each violation notice, each confrontation, each time Karen found a new reason to harass her. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke, anger replacing fear. This was my daughter, the strong, fierce woman I had raised. The accident hadn't broken her. But Karen Morrison had come close. Then Jennifer asked about that Saturday. Emma's composure cracked. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she described preparing for the hearing, being confronted by Karen, seeing the taser. I thought she was joking at first, Emma said, voice breaking. I thought surely no one would actually, but then she pressed it against my shoulder and I felt, she stopped, unable to continue. Take your time, Jennifer said softly. Emma wiped her eyes. It felt like my whole body was being ripped apart. I fell out of my van. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And she just stood there, looking down at me like I was nothing. Like I was garbage. What did she say to you? She said, maybe now you'll learn to follow the rules. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Santos's expression hardened. Emma, how has this incident affected you? I have nightmares. I'm afraid to leave my apartment. I missed the hearing I had worked so hard for. I can't. She paused, gathering courage. I can't stop feeling like I deserved it somehow. Like if I had just been better, quieter, less of a problem, none of this would have happened. I know that's not true, but I can't stop thinking it. My heart shattered. This was what Karen Morrison had done to my brilliant, beautiful daughter. She had made Emma doubt her own worth. Pemberton's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. He tried to suggest Emma had been argumentative, that she had refused to comply with reasonable requests. But the security footage Jennifer had obtained destroyed every accusation. Emma had been nothing but polite, even when Karen had been cruel. Jennifer called several other residents who testified about Karen's pattern of harassment. Each story added another layer to the portrait of a bully who had weaponized her authority. Then Jennifer played the security footage. The courtroom fell silent as we watched Karen approach Emma. The audio was clear, Emma explaining about the hearing, Karen threatening to tow her van. Then Karen pulling out the taser. "You can't be serious," Emma's voice on the recording, tinged with disbelief. The moment Karen pressed the taser to Emma's shoulder, several people in the courtroom gasped. Watching my daughter convulse and fall, hearing her cry out in pain, I gripped the bench in front of me so hard my knuckles turned white. The video continued, showing Emma on the ground, crying, unable to move. Karen standing over her, expression cold and satisfied. No remorse. No concern. Just contempt. When the video ended, Judge Santos looked at Karen with disgust. "Ms. Morrison, is that you in the video?" Karen's lawyer answered. "Your Honor, my client maintains she acted in self-defense." I asked Ms. Morrison. "Stand up." Karen stood reluctantly. "Is that you in the video, assaulting a disabled teenage girl with a taser?" I was enforcing HOA regulations. She was being combative. I saw no combative behavior. I saw a young woman trying to leave for an important appointment. Answer the question. Did you use a taser on Emma Thompson? Yes, but... Sit down. The rest of Karen's defense crumbled. Pemberton tried to call character witnesses, but they were weak, other HOA board members who seemed more interested in distancing themselves from Karen than defending her. Then Jennifer dropped her final bomb. "Your Honor, I'd like to call one more witness. Someone with expertise in fair housing law and civil rights violations." "Proceed." "I call Assistant Commissioner Michael Thompson." The courtroom stirred with confusion. Karen's head snapped up, looking around. Pemberton looked equally confused. I stood up in the back row, removed my sunglasses and baseball cap, and walked down the center aisle. The moment Karen saw me, her face went white. She leaned over to whisper frantically to her lawyer, who suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Emma turned in her wheelchair, eyes wide. "Dad?" I paused beside her, put my hand on her shoulder. "I'm here, sweetheart. I've always been here." Then I continued to the witness stand. Judge Santos smiled slightly, she recognized me. After being sworn in, Jennifer asked, "Can you state your name and occupation for the record?" "Michael Thompson. I serve as Assistant Commissioner for the State Civil Rights Division. I've held this position for 15 years. "And what is your relationship to the plaintiff?" "Emma Thompson is my daughter." Karen looked like she might faint. "Commissioner Thompson, in your professional capacity, have you reviewed this case?" "I have. Though I recused myself from direct involvement due to obvious personal interest, I ensured the case was properly investigated by our division." "And what did that investigation find?" "That Karen Morrison engaged in a systematic pattern of harassment and discrimination against my daughter based on her disability. Over 14 documented incidents in 3 months, Ms. Morrison violated the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and multiple state civil rights statutes. The investigation also uncovered similar discrimination against other disabled residents, elderly residents, veterans, and racial minorities." Pemberton shot to his feet. "Objection. This is beyond the scope." Overruled, Judge Santos said coldly. "I want to hear this. Continue, Commissioner." Our investigation found that Ms. Morrison has created a hostile environment at Riverside Gardens that systematically targets vulnerable residents. The use of a taser against my daughter represents the escalation of a pattern of abuse of authority. In my professional opinion, Ms. Morrison's actions constitute some of the most egregious civil rights violations I've encountered in my 15-year career. I looked directly at Karen. People in positions of power have a responsibility to protect those they serve, not to terrorize them. Ms. Morrison betrayed that responsibility in the most cruel way imaginable. She targeted someone she perceived as weak, someone she thought couldn't fight back. She was wrong. Jennifer continued her questioning, allowing me to detail every aspect of the investigation. By the time I finished, Karen was no longer smug. She looked terrified. Pemberton declined to cross-examine me. Smart choice. Judge Santos called for closing arguments. Jennifer's was powerful and impassioned. Pemberton's was defeated before it began. I'll issue my ruling after a brief recess, Judge Santos announced. The recess lasted 30 minutes. I sat with Emma and Sarah, holding my daughter's hand. You came, Emma whispered. You were here the whole time. I promised I would fight for you. I keep my promises. I thought I needed to do this alone. You did do it alone. You testified. You were brave. You told your truth. But sometimes, being strong also means letting people who love you stand beside you. That's not weakness, Emma. That's wisdom. She leaned against me, and for a moment, she was 7 years old again, my little girl who believed her dad could fix anything. The accident had changed so much, but not this. Not the bond between us. When court reconvened, Judge Santos looked grimmer than before. I've reviewed the evidence, testimony, and applicable law. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of discrimination and harassment I've encountered on this bench. Ms. Morrison, stand up. Karen stood, her lawyer beside her. Your actions were reprehensible. You systematically targeted a vulnerable young woman because of her disability. You abused your authority as HOA president. And when confronted with your victim's humanity, you responded with violence. The security footage shows no threat, no justification, no excuse for your actions. You tasered a 19-year-old girl in a wheelchair because she dared to stand up to your bullying. Judge Santos paused, letting her words sink in. I find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. You are hereby ordered to pay Emma Thompson $500,000 in compensatory damages for medical expenses, emotional distress, and punitive damages. You are permanently barred from holding any HOA position or authority. And I'm recommending to the district attorney that criminal assault charges be pursued to the fullest extent of the law. Karen's lawyer tried to speak, but Judge Santos cut him off. I'm not finished. Ms. Morrison, you represent everything wrong with how power can corrupt people. You took a position meant to serve your community and weaponized it against the most vulnerable among you. You made a young woman, who had already survived a devastating accident, question her own worth. You made her feel like she didn't deserve to exist in public spaces. The judge's voice grew harder. But Emma Thompson is stronger than you. Despite everything you did to her, she's here today. She told her story. She stood up to you. And now, everyone knows exactly who you are. Judge Santos looked at Emma. Ms. Thompson, I am deeply sorry for what you endured. No one should ever be treated the way you were treated. I hope this verdict gives you some measure of justice. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. But these were different tears. These were tears of relief. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality. The story exploded across local and then national news. HOA President Taser's disabled teen became a headline that captured the nation's outrage. The security footage went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed millions of times. Karen Morrison became the face of HOA tyranny, disability discrimination, and abuse of power. Her life, as she had known it, was destroyed. The criminal charges were filed. She eventually pleaded guilty to assault and received 18 months in prison, plus 3 years probation. The HOA board immediately removed her and issued a public apology. Riverside Gardens underwent complete management overhaul. They hired a new management company, implemented comprehensive anti-discrimination policies, and established a resident advocacy committee that included Emma as a founding member. 14 other residents filed their own lawsuits against Karen for harassment. Each one won. But the real victory wasn't the money or the convictions or the news coverage. The real victory was watching Emma find herself again. 2 weeks after the trial, she called me. "Dad, I've been thinking." "About what, sweetheart?" "About what you said. About being strong and letting people stand beside you. I want to go back to school. I want to study law. I want to be like you and Jennifer, helping people who get bullied and pushed around by people like Karen." My throat tightened with emotion. "You'd be amazing at that." I was so angry at myself for not handling everything alone. "But you showed me that's not how strength works. Strength is knowing when to ask for help. Strength is standing up even when you're scared. Strength is telling your story even when it hurts. When did you get so wise?" I asked, smiling through tears. "I learned from the best." 6 months later, Emma enrolled in college, majoring in pre-law with a focus on disability rights. She moved into a different apartment, one with a management company that actually valued their residents. She still had nightmares occasionally, but they grew less frequent. She started a blog about disability advocacy that gained thousands of followers. She testified before the state legislature about HOA reform. She became exactly what I always knew she could be, a force for change. I attended Emma's speech at the state capitol. She was testifying in support of new legislation that would restrict HOA authority and create better protections for disabled residents. She wheeled herself to the microphone with confidence, no tremor in her shoulders now. And when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "My name is Emma Thompson. A year ago, I was assaulted by my HOA president because I'm disabled. She tasered me because I parked in my assigned accessible spot. She tasered me because I dared to believe I had the same rights as everyone else. She tasered me because she thought I was weak." Emma paused, looking around the room. But here's what Karen Morrison didn't understand. Disability doesn't make you weak. Cruelty makes you weak. Bullying makes you weak. Hiding behind rules and regulations to mask your prejudice makes you weak. I survived a car accident that should have killed me. I learned to live in a body that doesn't work the way it used to. I rebuilt my life from nothing. That's strength. The room was absolutely silent. The legislation before you today would prevent what happened to me from happening to someone else. It would require HOA boards to receive training on fair housing law. It would establish oversight for HOA enforcement actions. It would protect vulnerable residents from people who abuse their authority. I urge you to pass this bill. Because everyone deserves to feel safe in their home. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And no one should be tasered for being disabled. The applause was thunderous. Several legislators had tears in their eyes. The bill passed unanimously 2 weeks later, signed into law with Emma standing beside the governor. Karen Morrison served her prison sentence in silence. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no remorse. But it didn't matter. She was irrelevant now. Her power was gone, her reputation destroyed, her cruelty exposed. Emma, meanwhile, flourished. She made the dean's list her first semester. She joined the Disability Rights Student Organization and became their president by sophomore year. She started dating a wonderful young man who saw her for exactly who she was, strong, brilliant, beautiful, unstoppable. And every night, she called me to talk about her day. Sometimes she needed advice. Sometimes she just needed to vent. Sometimes she just wanted to hear my voice. "Dad," she said one evening, about 18 months after the trial. "Yeah, sweetheart." "Thank you." "For what?" "For fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. For showing me that asking for help isn't weakness. For teaching me that justice is real, even when it takes time. For being the dad who taught me my disability doesn't define me, but neither does what Karen Morrison did to me. I define me." I couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by love and pride and gratitude that this extraordinary person was my daughter. "Emma, you've always defined yourself. I just made sure the world didn't get in your way." She laughed. "We made sure. Together. That's the point, right? We're stronger together than we are alone. That's exactly the point." As I hung up the phone that night, I thought about justice. Real justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration. It's about taking someone who has been broken down and helping them stand back up. It's about making sure the powerful answer to the powerless. It's about transforming victims into advocates, pain into purpose, trauma into triumph. Karen Morrison thought she had power. She thought her position, her rules, her Taser made her strong. But she learned, too late, that real power doesn't come from what you can do to people. It comes from what you can do for them. Emma understood that now. And she would spend the rest of her life using her voice, her strength, and her story to make sure no one else felt as small as Karen Morrison had tried to make her feel. That was justice. Not the verdict, not the prison sentence, not the financial judgment. The real justice was watching my daughter will herself into that courtroom, terrified and traumatized, and then watching her will herself out, head held high, knowing she had been heard, believed, and vindicated. The real justice was knowing that Karen Morrison's cruelty hadn't destroyed Emma, it had forged her into someone even stronger. The real justice was this: Emma Thompson was free. And Karen Morrison would carry the weight of what she had done for the rest of her life. In the end, that was the only verdict that mattered.